All right, hello everyone, and welcome to this week's podcast episode. My name is Ashley Stewart, and this is Awareness with Ashley. So, in today's video, I want to get into how no matter how many things I talk about that has helped me with my migraines, none of them are a complete cure. All of the tools that I mention and all of the things that I talk about are things that I'm either interested in, have found that they've helped, or are just tools that I find. And I include my Aimovig in that. Like, even with how much success I've had with that particular medication, it's not 100%. It's not a cure. It allows me to live a fairly normal life, which is all I really wanted. But it's not 100%. No matter what I seem to talk about, people are always like making suggestions on how if I just did this one other thing that I would be completely cured of my migraines. Some of them have been pretty wild, I would say. One of the wildest though that I've found was on YouTube. I actually had a conversation with this person, and actually I just want to address this comment because I think you guys will know which one I'm talking about if you watch my videos recently. But I had one that was like about shielding yourself from, I think it was like some type of atmospheric weather or something. I actually didn't say this in the comment when I replied to this person, but one of my hobbies outside of YouTube is actually photographing the northern lights. So like, I have an app on my phone that will tell me when the northern lights are going to be really active, and every time there's a solar flare. I've never, ever had a correlation with any one of those notifications in a migraine. And if I have, it's been coincidence because it's not all of the time. Like, so there are certain things that you can figure out with migraines that might be a trigger, right? So like actual weather, like atmospheric weather, low pressure systems, pretty much every time for me will trigger a migraine. My periods, pretty much every time for me, will trigger at least some period of migraine or migraine type symptoms. So depending on where my Aimovig shot falls and how long it's been since I've actually had a dose of it, I can actually feel a migraine starting, but then it doesn't progress because that's what the Aimovig is supposed to do. And then I got one the other day on Twitter that was like it was a reply to a short video, and it was talking about how meditation can be very hard at times and how that emotional turmoil can affect me with migraines. And they're like essentially telling me, well, if you just took like psychedelics or something like that, that you wouldn't be having that. And I kind of agree with them to a point, but getting high or using different drugs, whether that be things like psychedelics or whether that be, I know people who swear on things like cannabis too. And like, I live in a place where that stuff is legal, and I would say the same thing. Yeah, of course it's going to help with your pain because it's going to make you high on top of it. So it's probably not the way you want to be going. And along with that, when you essentially alter your state of consciousness with whatever substance you want to use, I really do feel like it's a type of distraction that's distracting you from some of the deeper and harsher things that we all have to dive into with emotion work. And if you really want to get really, really deep into the spiritual aspect and non-duality and specific, like with that kind of stuff, I think that using substances might be a good way to see what's possible, but I think at some point you gotta leave that crutch behind and address the harder things. I talk about everything that I do because people who live with migraines are generally often quite curious about what I'm doing to manage them. They may be looking for things they can try, or many of us are just looking for hope that things may get better. I know for me that it's more about what I call a communalization of pain, where people just want to have someone that they can truly understand what they're going through. I've talked about this many times, but even when you have the best support system that you think you could ever have, And I know for me, I feel that way with the people who are closest to me. I feel like I got very lucky in terms of the support that I do have. Not having someone go through the same exact condition feels very lonely at times. I talked a little bit about this actually the other day on my live show because it's very similar in this way with being on a meditation journey and exploring non-duality in particular. Like, most people aren't interested in this stuff. I'm questioning whether that call to explore non-duality is truly a choice, because it really does feel like a calling at some point. You feel an endless amount of suffering and all of that, and you feel called to it. It's not really a choice. We don't choose to get migraines. We don't choose to get IIH. Some, I guess, might argue with IIH that it's a choice as it can be related to weight, but obesity is a very different topic that is far more than a choice, and that could be a whole separate podcast. So I'm not going to get into it, but I really don't feel that either of these is a choice. With that being said, you feel like you're being brought down this path. It is a very lonely path because nobody else really understands. People will try, but until you've gone through it and experienced some of this stuff yourself, it is impossible for you to truly understand what it is, because both of these situations involve not being able to put something into words that other people will describe. It's kind of like me telling you or trying to explain the blue on this blanket. So, like, you cannot truly understand, like, try to explain to someone who has never seen this color that what this color looks like. You can do your best to explain someone the environment, like, but what they're picturing in their head may be completely different than how you're describing it. This is why I think some people really feel into books a lot better than movie interpretations of their favorite novels, because what they have pictured in their head from the words on the page is so different than how the director may have interpreted the same exact paragraph. And then they also want to give their own creative spin on it. Let's just say that you are trying to describe something in words that really cannot be described. It's going to be a very different outcome. And you're probably missing important pieces that you may dismiss as not important and that someone else may need in order to get the understanding. And this is why I think the communalization of pain and this just a generalized feeling of community, of having people in your life that truly understand that when you say, I'm dealing with a really bad flare-up in my migraines right now, those people are going to truly understand what you're experiencing. I think migraines are a little bit easier because there are a lot of people who do deal with migraines. However, again, when you get into the more chronic version of migraines, this becomes extremely difficult to do, because people often who have migraines at least tend to get a break, or they have very specific triggers or whatever. And episodic is completely different than chronic, and I've talked about this, it feels like, at length lately. So this communization of pain truly is something that I think is an important thing. And one of the things that I've come to really appreciate with my platform, and one of the ways that people can be someone's biggest help, is to just support their person in their life with migraines by being there. If we have that one person that we've never said a word about, what we may be going through, maybe we have because we trust them beyond all imagination. But if, like, that person is just willing to sit there and be that listening ear, I think you have, like, the crown jewel of best friends in your life. For me, that hasn't really been a person, it's been my camera. So, like, a camera just sits there and records. In my case, my phone. I hit the record button and it'll be there for me to vent out the things that are frustrating or whatever's going on. Whether or not I choose to share that publicly is a completely different situation, but often I get to talk about things and vent about things that though they may not make the final cut of the video or podcast, whatever I happen to be working on, the one difference being when I'm live is that it truly is a type of therapy, because that thing that you're talking about, your deepest, darkest fears, is unable to speak back to you. So you're not having to deal with the fear of constantly worrying about what that thing or person might say. You're not having to worry about what advice it might be giving you. I think it's very, very difficult to find what I would consider a metaphor as someone's camera to them. And I think we often do put this particular responsibility into hobbies, whether that be filming, whether that be making a diary, whether that be, whatever that creative outlet might be. I just can't imagine going through this anymore and not having a creative outlet. Like, it's been that important to me. As a society, we seem to feel pressure to respond to suffering by trying to ease that suffering. And many of the ways in which we try to ease that suffering end up causing the suffering to become worse or the message to be lost in the moment. So what I mean by that is we often feel like the only way we can ease suffering is by offering advice on how to help someone, or like, we as a society, I don't think are conditioned to just sit there in silence and really, really listen to a person. That's why I say I think the best people in our lives are the people who can, sit there and just listen. I don't get mad at people for suggesting advice anymore, because I know that they're coming from a well-meaning place, but it's just, I don't know. It just feels like there's never I think I heard it best said in a video the other day, but if you can be that person who can just be there to support a person and no matter what they're doing, you will be their best friend. Because so much as a society, we feel the need to listen to respond instead of listening to understand or listen to truly listen. And when it comes to people who want to have a friend in their life, particularly with chronic illness, I think there's a lot of deeper fear. I know I've had the fear of, how much do I open up to this person because I'm afraid of that advice? And I get that that's a fear. But it's a fear because it happens so frequently. I think we get this fear because of the amount of times it comes up. Like, at the start, I really wasn't afraid to share my story. But as time has gone on, and this only really applies in person, I really don't have any fear sharing this publicly via video, because it's a different interaction. Like, it's a bit delayed, I would say. Like, by the time you're seeing this video, it's been a few days, usually by the time I've actually said what I want to say. And so the therapy of that is I get to vent out my frustrations, and then there's a bit of a delayed response usually. So the difference is the live. The live shows are instantaneous feedback if you have a good amount of people. You can find someone in your life who's willing to be supportive of whatever you're doing and whatever you're going through without the need to offer advice and to just really be there for that person. I think it's the golden relationship. If someone is really, truly wanting advice, they usually will, I think, come out and directly say, like, do you have any suggestions or advice for this? I think we're a lot more direct when we actually are seeking that particular help. At least I find I tend to be. Maybe it's my personality, I don't know. But when I really truly want advice, I will say, now, do you have any suggestions or ways I can improve this? Because that's the immediate way of saying, I'm looking for advice on how I can actually make the situation better. However, if I'm just sharing, I'm not feeling all that good today, I'm kind of struggling these days. Some people might interpret that as, I need to help this person feel better. They're having a rough day. When truly, I think sometimes in that situation, I'm just wanting to be understood that, oh yeah, I'm having a bad day. It's not always a seeking advice situation. No matter how many things I talk about on the channel, no matter how much I do, I still have my bad days that I'm struggling, particularly recently. I actually just released a short video yesterday talking about that with the journey with non-duality, but because this is such an emotional thing, it has affected my migraines. And actually, I have been kind of lucky lately with my migraines. I haven't really noticed any increase, much of an increase. There's been a bit of an increase, but like I said, the increase is probably due to the emotional stress right now. No matter how much I do and no matter what I talk about on this channel, that what I'm mentioning in that particular focus, it hasn't cured the situation. It hasn't completely fixed the situation. The situation still exists despite how good the glimpses may be. So I guess I hope that with me talking about the things that help, that it offers a glimpse of hope. And this communalization of pain is really, really important to me, and why I continue to talk about migraines, because honestly, like, as I keep saying, this topic is getting extremely difficult. It's not that I've ran out of things to talk about. It's that I have to get up in my head in order to talk about these things. No matter how good things might look, some days are still a major challenge, no matter what tools I have access to. Thanks for joining me. And now it's time for the weekly plug for the social media. So if you're looking to follow me off of YouTube, or you're wanting to find out where you can find me, you can find me on Instagram and TikTok at Awareness with Ashley. This is where I share my short video content. I very rarely share personal stories or whatever on Instagram. A lot of the personal stuff is actually on my locals page and for supporters. So if you're kind of wanting to get to know me a little bit off of social media, I think that's probably where I feel the most comfortable sharing at this point with that. That is at ashleystewart.locals.com. And you get access to all the content on there, and we can build an awesome community. It's a way to support the content, because some of the features that I use are not free with this. So it costs money for me to do the captions on the shorts. It costs money for me to pay for some of the background and B-roll things that you see. I make a lot of my stuff with an app called Canva, actually, that I pay for a yearly subscription to. Other than that, though, I really don't use a lot of extra stuff, but this here was made on Canva, and my logo was made on Canva. It's similar to Patreon, basically. If you're wanting to find me on Facebook, you can do so at Ashley Stewart. Again, you're probably not going to see much difference in the stuff I actually post on Facebook. I generally it's a cross post of everything else. Sometimes I do lives to Facebook, but not very often anymore. And Twitter, you can find me at AshleyStewart94. This is kind of more like my quick thoughts and stuff like that. I do often try to share like live notifications and just like thoughts that might be on my mind. It is a bit more of a personal Twitter, so sometimes I do share some more personal things that I don't mind sharing out publicly. But I don't actually post a lot to Twitter just because I'm not a big fan of the platform. If my Twitter happens to just all of a sudden not really get any reach at all anymore, which it's questionable sometimes even now, but let's just say it stops getting any reach at all, I may not use it at all anymore. I haven't really decided. And then for those of you who are listening on the podcast, you can find us on YouTube. My channel name is the same as my Facebook name. It's at Ashley Stewart. And please subscribe and leave a review. It just helps get the content out there more. And that's the same as making sure you guys hit the subscribe and like button on YouTube. It just allows us to reach more. It's completely free. And it allows you to get notifications about when I go live. those aren't as predictable as what I used to, because I cannot force myself to do content anymore. Like, I really do have to feel that it's the right thing to talk about at the time. So with all that being said, thanks for joining me for this week's podcast, and I hope to see you in the next one. Bye, everyone.